Okay, for this section, we're going to take some notes on directions. So make sure you take these notes because you're going to have to turn them in. So these notes are going to explain to you how to count atoms and elements. So we're going to need 4 columns. Easy way to do 4 columns is to fold your paper in half once and then fold it in half again. Then you have 4 columns. So I went ahead and drew the lines on mine. So first column, our example is going to be the element C. So if you have this on your page and you're counting atoms, you're going to know that it's carbon. And here are the directions. When there is no subscript, no subscript, it's implied that there is one atom. There is one atom. So if there's no subscript, there's one atom. So on your papers, you can always go in and put your invisible 1 there because it just means that there's one atom. So in summary, C is one atom. And if you were to draw it, it would look just like that. We don't do too much drawing, but sometimes you'll see a picture. Our next example is CO2. So if you see CO2, when there is a subscript, or anything like CO2, when there is a subscript, which is here, we can put an arrow there. When there is a subscript, the previous element has that amount of atoms. Element has that amount of atoms. So for example, this would be C, and you can throw your invisible 1 in there in a different color. C equals 1, and O is how many? 2. You have 2 oxygens. And honestly, that's going to give you a total of 3 atoms. And if you were to ever draw this one, it would be 1 C and 2 O's. Our next example, if you notice it's getting harder and harder. Let's see. Our next example, Mg. Ooh, let's throw some of these in here. OH. So the first thing I like to do when I have examples, why does my H look kind of weird, is go ahead and put in my invisible 1s. You know that there's a lowercase g there, so that G, Mg, is magnesium. Let's throw our invisible 1s. You know the O is oxygen. And even this H, this hydrogen, there's only one. So it may seem small, but it helps to just throw your invisible ones in there, because remember, in chemical formulas, they don't have a one, but it wouldn't hurt to put one in there. So when the subscript is outside of the parentheses, multiply everything by it. So when the subscript is outside the, did I spell that right? Parentheses, yes. Like that. How it's outside of the parentheses. Multiply everything, I'm going to put everything, but every subscript inside by, I'm going to put it to keep it short, but by it, by this. So for example, let me write this. You're going to take this 2 and you're going to multiply it by your subscript here, which happens to be 1. Then you're going to take this 2 again and multiply it by the subscript here, which happens to be another 1. Not by any element that's outside of the parentheses. So for this one, magnesium, we have one of those. Oxygen, 2 times 1. And hydrogen, 2 times 1 again is 2. See, it's in math you call it the distributive property. In science it's the same thing, except for math this would be up here. In science it's at the bottom. So your total is 5 total atoms. Now let's do our last example. Hopefully you guys got that first one, because I'm scooting it over. Since it's a video, you can't always rewind it. So the last example, let's put a coefficient up here. So we're going to have 3 and parentheses. Let's throw all this in one. Oxygen, hydrogen, and a subscript. So with my coefficients, it says when there's a coefficient and a subscript, you're going to do the subscript first and then the coefficient. So I'm going to write that. My notes say when there's a coefficient, coefficient, when there's a coefficient, which is that big number, and a subscript, which is the little number, first multiply by the subscript, then the coefficient. Sorry about this weird looking handwriting. So you multiply the subscript first, then the coefficient. So what I like to do is actually cover the coefficient, because we don't need it yet. So you're going to cover the coefficient and do this like normal. You have your invisible 1, invisible 1. So for oxygen, there is, oh, I should have did this in red. Sorry, y'all. 2 oxygens. For hydrogen, 2 times 1. Remember, you carry it in distributive property. There is 2 hydrogens. Now, we're done with that, except we have a coefficient. For the coefficient, you are going to do this 3 times. How do you do it 3 times? You multiply each one by 3. So instead of 2 oxygens, we have 6 oxygens. Instead of 2 hydrogens, you have 6 hydrogens. So your total is 12 total atoms. So for good notes, you can take this and let's put a little thing here, because this goes with all of this and this goes in there. So anytime you have a coefficient, do that last. Solve it and then multiply by whatever your coefficient is. So these are some notes to help you remember how to do each kind. My next video will be practice. Make sure you submit these for a grade.